All right, let's jump right in. We're going to deconstruct one of the oldest and most epic stories humanity has ever told, the Great Flood, straight out of the book of Genesis. It's a story of complete destruction, yeah? But it's also about unbelievable survival and a total reset for the entire world.
And this quote, wow, this is the starting point. Before we even get to the rain or the famous ark, you have to understand the why. The text paints this incredibly grim picture. It's not about a few bad people. It's that the whole world, the very thoughts of humanity, had gone wrong. This isn't just a minor issue. It's a diagnosis that civilization had reached rock bottom.
So how do we get from a world that's totally corrupt to a promise symbolized by a rainbow? Well, here's our roadmap. We'll start with what was so wrong with the world. Then we'll meet the one guy chosen to build the escape plan. After that, we'll dive into the flood itself, see what happened, and then we'll look at the new promise made afterward. Finally, we'll unpack what it all means, the blueprint for the new world that came out of all that water. Okay, let's start at the beginning. A world filled with violence. The text is really insistent on this point. This was not some random natural disaster. No. This was a response. There was a cause, a deep, powerful reason for what was about to unfold. And it really boils down to two main problems: corruption and violence. And these weren't just isolated things happening here and there. They were the defining features of the whole world. The entire system was broken, society was broken, and because of that, the whole earth was filled with violence. So the decision is made for a hard reset. And right here, you see this incredible contrast. In the middle of all this decay, the story zooms in on just one person, Noah. On one hand, you have the entire world where people have corrupted their ways, and on the other, you have this one guy who's called righteous and blameless. He's the exception. He's the one who walked faithfully with God. And that single distinction, well, it changes everything for him and for the entire world. So, because Noah was this one exception, he gets an absolutely unbelievable job. He, this one righteous man, is told to build a lifeboat for the planet. I mean, think about that. It has to be one of the most ambitious engineering projects in all of literature, and he was the only one for the job. So, what even is an ark? Well, think of it less like a ship and more like a giant floating sanctuary. It wasn't designed to go fast or to be steered anywhere. Its only purpose was to endure. To be a floating biosphere, basically, meant to preserve the seeds of life while the world outside got washed clean. And the sheer scale of this thing is just mind-blowing. 300 cubits long. To put that in perspective for us, that's about 450 feet. That's a football field and a half. This was not a boat. This was a colossal undertaking. And the instructions were super specific. Can you imagine the to-do list? First, build this enormous 3-story vessel out of cypress wood. Then, waterproof the whole thing with pitch, inside and out. But honestly, the building part might have been the easiest. Think about the logistics. You have to go out and gather a pair of every single living creature on land. And then you have to stock enough food to keep them all and your family alive for over a year. It's just staggering to think about. So, the ark is built. All the unlikely passengers are on board, the doors are sealed shut, and now the stage is set for the main event. The world basically holds its breath, and then the rain begins to fall. You know, this timeline really puts it all into perspective. We always hear about 40 days and 40 nights of rain, but that's just the beginning. The water keeps rising for 150 days. That's 5 months. It's not until the 7th month that the ark even finds a place to land. And it takes a full year. A whole year passes before the ground is actually dry enough for them to leave. This was a long, silent, and probably terrifying ordeal. And the text does not pull any punches here. It is a complete decreation of the world. Every living thing that was on the dry land, people, animals, birds, is gone. The only thing left is this tiny boat floating on a global ocean, carrying the very fragile seed of the future. But this story doesn't just end in silence and destruction. After the flood, the whole tone shifts, moving from judgment to hope. This is where the narrative turns a corner and starts talking about a promise, a covenant for a brand new start. And this little sequence with the birds is such a brilliant way to show that turning point. Imagine the tension, right? They've been cooped up for a year. Noah sends out a raven, then a dove. It comes back with nothing. He waits, sends it again, and this time it returns with a freshly plucked olive leaf. That one tiny branch is the first sign of new life, a symbol of hope and peace that has echoed through thousands of years. When he sends it out a final time and it doesn't return, they know. It's time. So once they're on dry land, this incredible promise is made. This is the covenant. It's a declaration that even though humans are the way they are, this method, total destruction, will never be used again. It's a fundamental change in the relationship between God and every living thing on Earth. So, along with this big promise comes a new set of rules for Civilization 2.0. The first one sounds familiar: be fruitful and fill the earth. But then we get some new directives that will shape everything that follows. Animals are now okay to eat, but there's a key rule about their lifeblood. And maybe the most important one: there's a reckoning for shedding human blood, specifically because humanity is made in the image of God. This is a foundational pillar for a new kind of world. So, after the flood, the promise, and the new rules, what's the big takeaway? Why does this story still resonate so much? Let's zoom out and look at the blueprint it created for a new world. So after all that chaos, that long wait, and the brand new start, what are we really left with? What are the fundamental ideas that this whole epic story is built on? Well, it seems to come down to four really big themes. First, this powerful rhythm of creation and decreation. The flood is like hitting rewind on Genesis 1, taking everything back to watery chaos before hitting play on a new creation. Second, there's a huge new emphasis on the sanctity of life, with new laws that explicitly protect it. Third, the whole story pivots on this idea of a covenant. This isn't just a simple promise, it's a binding agreement between the divine and all life. And finally, of course, there's the theme of a second chance. Humanity gets a do-over, a fresh start from a single family. It's a deeply hopeful, if also kind of terrifying idea about our potential to begin again. So in the end, the flood story is so much more than just a disaster tale. It's really a foundational story that tears the world down just to build it back up on a completely new basis, one built on a promise, a profound respect for life, and the hope of a second chance. And this ancient story leaves us with a question that feels very modern. It ends with this profound promise to never destroy the world again, which makes you wonder, what are the promises we need to make today? What are the covenants, the serious, unbreakable commitments we need to make to each other and to the planet itself to build a future that can actually endure?